Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, France's top court overturns an earlier judicial decision to extradite 2 men suspected of playing a part in the Rwandan genocide. Meanwhile, key witnesses testify in the case of a former intelligence chief, Pascal Simbikangwa. Nigeria's president comes in for more criticism. Residents of a town in the northeast are furious that security forces withdrew checkpoints ahead of a bloody attack by Islamist militants on a local school. And one of the most high-profile Ugandans to slam a tough new anti-gay law. Opposition leader KIZZA BESIGYE says President Yoweri Museveni is trying to divert attention away from more pressing domestic problems. First up, France's top court has overturned an earlier judicial decision to allow the extradition of 2 Rwandans suspected of playing roles in the 1994 genocide. The Court de Cassation overturned an appeals court ruling from last November, which approved the extradition of Claude Muhayimana and Innocent Musabyamana. Now, both are accused of taking part in the massacre of ethnic Tutsis. The court ruled neither could be judged for acts that weren't legally criminal at the time. Well, it also upheld a ruling rejecting the extradition of Rwanda's deputy army chief of staff when the genocide took place. Meanwhile, the Paris trial of former Rwandan army captain Pascal Simbikangwa has been closely followed by genocide survivors.
Eyewitnesses have begun testifying against former Rwandan military officer Pascal Simbikangwa in a crucial phase of his trial in Paris. He stands accused of involvement in genocide in Rwanda. Valerie Bemeriki testified by video conference from Kigali. In prison for life, she had been a journalist at Radio 1000 Collines, or 1000 Hills, that incited the massacre of Tutsis. She said that Pascal Simbikangwa was a founder of the radio station. On April 7, 1994, the day after the killing of the Rwandan president, he allegedly told the radio station director, "The Tutsis have killed the president. We must seek and destroy them." He was also at anti-Tutsi roadblocks.
She said that yes, during the genocide, he was there. He brought food for the people in the barracks and talked with the militia groups. He brought them ammunition. She simply told the court what she saw.
This was key testimony because since the beginning of the trial, the defendant has said he did not leave his home during the genocide. Defense lawyers said that Valerie Bemeriki lied.
She wants her sentences to be changed. She says she doesn't expect anything, but she has nothing to lose. She's doing life in prison. She testifies regularly in trials and says what she wants. And her testimony was not the same as in front of the judges. There are contradictions.
Several witnesses mixed up dates and places, proof for the defense that they are not credible. "You're being manipulated by the Rwandan government," Pascal Simbikangwa yelled out. 20 years after the genocide, Simbikangwa is still frightening to some. Several witnesses have refused to testify, fearing reprisals against their families in Rwanda.
The death toll from an attack on a school in northeastern Nigeria has risen to 59 after a 16-year-old boy died from his wounds on Thursday. Now, he was one of the dozens shot by suspected Boko Haram extremists who attacked the federal government college in Yobe State on Tuesday. With hundreds killed by the jihadists this month alone, Nigerians are growing increasingly frustrated with the government's efforts to crack down on the terror group. Kethavan Gordestani has more.
A building raided and burned by Boko Haram. In the early hours of Tuesday, the Islamist militants attacked a boarding school, killing dozens of young boys, a tragedy blamed on the failings of Nigeria's security forces.
It was unfortunate that up to the 4-hour period or 5 hours of killings and massacre, there were no any security men around to contain the situation.
Since the beginning of the year, about 300 people have died in Boko Haram attacks in northeastern Nigeria, fueling anger among the population and local authorities. Last week, the governor of neighboring Borno State claimed Boko Haram was better armed and more motivated than the Nigerian army, criticism that did not sit well with President Goodluck Jonathan.
But if it is what it said is correct, then I'll pull out the military from Borno State for 1 month. But I'll go back and take over the state. The governor should be mindful about what it says.
Jonathan is under fire for more than just failing security. There have been several high-profile corruption scandals in the oil industry. Last Thursday, the president suspended the central bank governor who revealed some $20 billion were missing from the state oil company's accounts.
He appears a nice, simple person who's trying his best to do his best. And now his greatest failing, obviously, is that he's surrounded by people who are extremely incompetent, who are extremely fraudulent, and who he trusts.
The president's allies are also jumping ship. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar joined the main opposition party earlier this month. So far, 5 state governors and dozens of lawmakers have also defected.
One of the most high-profile Ugandans to so far slam a tough new anti-gay law, opposition leader KIZZA BESIGYE says President Yoweri Museveni is trying to divert attention away from more pressing domestic problems. Whilst popular at home, the law, which holds that homosexuals can be jailed for life, has been condemned by international donors. BESIGYE says moves to freeze or redirect foreign aid over the law smacks of double standards, and governments have in the past dealt with Kampala despite accusations of violations of other fundamental rights. However, he's criticised some of the reasoning used by supporters of the homophobic law.
It is being portrayed as if it's a foreign behavior or character of foreigners being introduced and forced onto Ugandans, which is clearly very untrue. Homosexuality has been in Uganda. It's recorded, documented in Uganda long before any foreign interface with our country. So homosexuality is as Ugandan as all other Ugandan behaviors. It has nothing to do with the foreigners.
Hundreds more French soldiers are heading out to Central African Republic as Paris boosts its force in the strife-torn nation. On Monday, French MPs voted to extend the military operation beyond an initial 4 months, whilst lobbying for it to be transformed into an official UN mission. Interreligious violence that followed a Seleka rebel takeover last year continues to escalate, this despite a new interim government and thousands of African Union and French troops. Well, our Chris Moore's in Bangui. He joins us now. Chris, you've spent time at a refuge set up by the French army for those too scared to go home at night.
That's right. In terms of describing this facility, it's a project, a pilot scheme which has been set up by the local mayor in conjunction with French and African authorities and the local gendarmerie. It's about 3,000 people who are spending the night here tonight. Now, the idea, as you say, is to provide them refuge for people who are scared about the situation in their streets. There are still frequent gunfire at night here, still frequent grenade attacks. A lot of the problems they're facing now simply relate to robbery and attacks later at night. There's still a lot of insecurity in those neighbourhoods. One of the ideas of this project is to try and dissuade people from spending their time in the larger camps, like the one at the airport, which at one point housed about 100,000 people, and try and get them back closer to their homes. As I said, there's a lot of insecurity. We're out in the Pika 5-kilometre Sank district today. There were reports of deaths there last night. We saw 4 bodies in the local ward to survive reprisal attacks this morning. The atmosphere there is still very tense. Now, the reality of the situation in terms of that intercommunal violence you were talking about is that a lot of the city's Muslims have now left. A lot of international organisations have been talking about ethnic cleansing. Earlier, we went to see the Central African Republic's President, SAMBA PANZA. This is what she had to say about both of those subjects.
The fact that Muslims are leaving the country in numbers is of huge concern to me and my government. They're part of a community which has deep roots in this country. Most of them don't even know their countries of origin. They are from the Central African Republic. As for ethnic cleansing, that's a deeply inappropriate term. There are no ethnic problems here. What we have are intercommunal tensions with a strong religious element. There is no ethnic cleansing.
Kathy, you've been having some sound problems there. I apologise for that. Catherine Samba-Panza there talking about some of the issues facing the country, also telling us that whatever happens, she'd be very pleased to see more troops coming here, whether they be French or otherwise, in terms of securing the country, moving the economy and the political process forward.
Thanks very much, Chris. Chris Moore there speaking to us from Bangui, struggling through despite a few technical problems there. Well, the expectation that Egypt's army chief would soon be announcing his candidacy in the upcoming presidential race this spring has been quashed by news that FATTAH al-SISI is staying on as defence minister in the new government. He'll first have to vacate his ministerial post if he wants to run, but may still do so after details of the election are thrashed out.
Confusion reigns in Egypt after new Prime Minister Ibrahim Malab announced many of the previous cabinet's ministers will stay in their jobs. It was thought they'd resigned on Monday to allow Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi a clear run at the presidency, but he too is to stay in his post. He would have to resign from the cabinet in order to run. Sisi's candidacy has been expected for months as his personal popularity soared and his face popped up on everything from commemorative photos to chocolates. But to supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood, he's the mastermind behind a coup that threw out a democratically elected government and led to a bloody state crackdown. Liberal Egyptians also fear he could become a new Mubarak.
Will we once again be ruled by a personality who will not be held accountable for his actions? Will he be placed above the law and the constitution? There's a danger here when you bring in someone who has that position and yet is tied to a movement which was truly created by the people.
Sisi may just be waiting for the electoral law to be finalised before resigning and announcing his bid. Inside or outside of the cabinet, he's still widely seen as the most powerful man in Egypt.
Well, that wraps up African news for me. I'll be back with more in about 45 minutes. Join us then if you can. Take care.